We are going to go ahead and set up our application to see how it's working. You can do that typing either Ionic Serve or ng-serve. Once it's done, you can close your terminal, and in the browser you can navigate to localhost and the port 4200. This is if you type ng-serve. If you type Ionic Serve, I believe it's port 8000. And in here we see just the basic layout that Ionic starts with. We're going to go ahead and delete everything inside of the homepage.css file and everything inside the Ionic content in the HTML file. We are going to render a list of data in our application. For that, I created some sample data in our database, and now we're going to go ahead and connect it to our app. Next, go to the home page, and in here, let's import Angular Firestore. We are going to create a class variable inside of this component called movies. And in the constructor, we are going to inject Angular Fire. Next, we are going to get our movies from the database. For that, let's go to the database for a moment, and you can see that we have a root collection called movies. Collections are like the main lists of the application. So a collection can have many documents. So we have a collection called movies, and inside here we have several documents. Each document is for an individual movie. The documents are really simple. They only have two properties. One is the title and the other one is the rating. Now we can go back to our application. And in here, what we're going to do is we are going to say, hey, Firestore, let's go ahead and go to the movies collection and just subscribe to that collection. This is going to be an observable of the collection movies. So then we can go ahead and subscribe. And we can say, okay, so the class variable called movies is going to be equal to movies. And if you want, we can log that to the console and see the data it's bringing. So when I save, you see that my application reloads. We are not showing anything on the screen, but if we go into the console, you can see that we have an array of 5 items. And in here, we have all of the movies. One thing you might note is that if we go to the database, we see that each movie, each document has an ID. This ID is auto-generated by Firestore and they ensure that this is a unique ID. But when we call the data in our application, we see that we are not getting back that ID. That's because the ID is not part of the document itself, it's part of the document's metadata. One thing you can do is to always store the ID inside of the document, but if that's not an option for you, there's a function for Angular Fire that can get it for you. And it's that inside of the value changes function, you can pass a property called ID field. And you say, hey, I want you to bring the ID of this document, and you're going to be naming that, or we're going to be creating a property inside the document called ID. Now, if I save this and reload the page, you can see that when I open the documents, now they have the rating, the title, or the ID. You can use whatever property name you want for ID. For example, I want to be more specific and I want to say, okay, this is a movie ID. And when I click save, and you see that it reloads, it's showing me movie ID. This is the unique string, and then the rating and the title. Okay, now we want to show this data on the screen. For that, we are going to go to our homepage.html file, and inside of our Ion content, we are going to create a list. For that, Ionic has a handy component called Ion list. And inside the list, we are going to populate that list with items. For that, we can use Ion item. Inside of the item, I'm going to give it a label as an example, just so that you can see it on the screen. And when I hit reload, you see that now we have our list item on the screen. Since the data from this list is going to come from the database, we are going to populate it programmatically. So we are not going to be hard coding the label or anything like that. For that, we are going to use one of Angular directives called ng4. And we are going to tell our item, okay, you're going to repeat yourself several times. And this is going to be okay for each movie of the movies array. You are going to repeat yourself. And if I save this, you're going to see that now we have 5 items on our list. And in here, instead of showing the string hello, I'm going to show a small title. And this title is going to show the movie.title. And then here a paragraph where I'm going to show the rating. And when I save and reload the page, you can see that now we have a list showing the title of the movies and the rating we gave them. We also want to be able to add movies to the database from our application. For that, we are going to create a new page to add movies. Let's go ahead and open the terminal. Let's kill the console process right now. We are going to use the Ionic CLI, and we're going to type Ionic generate page, and this is going to be the add movie page. We click enter, and you see that it's generating the files for us. We can go ahead and serve our application again. Okay, and if we open our files, we can see that here next to the home module, it added the add movie module. This module has its own routing and its view, style, and TypeScript files. Another change you can see is that it edited the app routing module and it added a new route for our application. So we have the home page and then we have the add movie page. So if we go in our application and navigate to add movie, you see that we are now in the add movie page. We can go ahead and close the console, close the routing file. We are going to go ahead and open the add movie components file. We just need to open the class and the view for now. Okay, let's start by adding the inputs to our application. First, we are going to add an item with an input. This is going to be a stack label. What this means is that the label is going to show on top of the field. This is going to be the movie title. Now, when I save and you reload the page, you can see that I can type right here and the label is highlighted on top of the input. One thing we can do is to the Ion content. Ionic has utility classes we can use. For example, if you say this is an Ion padding class, it's going to give some padding to the Ion content. Now we have to give a type to our input. We are going to say this is of type text, because here the users are going to type the name or titles of the movies they want to add to the database. And we also need a way to bind whatever value the user types here to our form so that we can send it. For that, in this example, we are going to use a property called ngModel. And we are going to say that this is equals to the movie.title. As you can see, we are getting an error here, and that's because the movie doesn't exist on this class. So we are going to go to the add movie page and we are going to add a class variable. It's going to be called movie and we can initialize it as title with an empty string and rating in 0. Now when we save and we go back to the HTML, you see that it's not giving us the error anymore. And if I go back to the add movie page, here I have my form and I can type on it and I get no errors. We also need to let the user add the rating. So we're going to duplicate this and we're going to say, okay, this is the movie rating. This is going to be of type number. And the model is movie.rating. When we save, you see that both appear here, and since rating is initialized in 0, we have the value here. And as you can see, it's taking this as an input type number, and when you're here, it's showing us the little carrots to move the numbers. And lastly, we're going to add a button so that our users can click it and send the data. This is going to be save movie. And when we click this button, we are going to trigger an event. So it's going to call the save movie function. And as you can see, we have another error here, and this is because save movie doesn't exist. So we're going to go back to the add movie page, and here we are going to create that function, save movie. Right now it's not going to do anything, so we're just going to log whatever value we have in the current movie. So yeah, if I type something here and I give it a rating, when I click Save Movie, you're going to see the object logged in the console. We want to be able to add these movies to the database, so we are going to go ahead and import Firestore into our application. We're going to inject it in the constructor, and in Save Movie, now we are going to say, okay, Firestore.collection. If you remember, the previous method was just adding value changes to get the data for the collection. In here, what we're going to do is, okay, we're going to say the same, the movies collection, but we are going to add a new object. And that object is going to be whatever the value of this .movie. When we click save, you see that it reloads, and we can go ahead and say, okay, this is going to be my favorite movie, and it has a rating of 10 out of 5. When I click save, you can see that it added it to the database. And if we go back to the home page, you can see that it's now here in our list. There are a couple of things here that we can improve. For example, you see that whatever we type here, when we click Save Movie, it's not doing anything else. So if I actually click it multiple times, you're going to see all of those movies are going to be added to the database. As a best practice, it's a good idea to actually clear the form and take the user back to the list page. So let's do that here. We are going to say, okay, I'm going to have the user navigate to a different page. For that, I'm going to use Angular's router. So I'm going to inject it here, private router, and this is of type router. Let's see here. And then I'm going to say, once this is properly added to the database, I want to do two things. First, I'm going to go ahead and make the value of this .movie equal to null. That way we can clear whatever it is that was in the form itself. And after that, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to use the router with this .router, and I'm going to navigate to the home page. We can do either like this /home, or we can do it like this and leave it empty as an empty string, because we have a redirection on our routing page that says that anything that goes to an empty string is going to go redirected to the home page. So here we can test it. A new movie. We can say whatever rating we want. When we click Save Movie, you see that it takes us back to the home page. And we have all of the movies here. Another thing we can improve is adding some navigation to these pages. For that, let's go ahead and open the home page. And in here, we can add a floating action button. Ionic has a specific component for that called IonFab. You can add it here, and you see that it gave us some options: vertical bottom, horizontal end. That means that when I save it, it's going to be in the bottom left, bottom right corner of the screen, and it's going to stay there. You see that when I scroll, it stays there. So we're going to go ahead and change the icon. There's an Ionicon called add. That's just a plus sign to add a new item. And we are going to say that whenever you click this button, we are going to navigate to that page. So we can use Angular's router link. This uses the Angular router, and we can say, hey, let's go to add movie. Now when I click save, and you see that I click here, it takes me to the add movie page. And I save whatever I want to save here, and then it takes me back to the home page. One thing we do not have right now is a way to update a current movie. And for that, we are going to be using the same Add Movie page. To be able to make that work, first we need to go to the app.routing file. In here, you're going to see that the Add Movie page here has the path Add Movie. We need to change this and say, okay, this is going to be Add Movie / movie ID. What this does is that it tells our application that we are going to navigate to the routes Add Movie, but we are going to pass a parameter called movie ID. When I save it, you're going to see an error because now the Add Movie route doesn't exist. So to navigate to the create page, I have to do Add Movie / and the ID. In our case, we're going to just type new, and you see it here on the screen. So let's go ahead and also fix this in the home page. So Add Movie / new. And let's go ahead and open the Add Movie page. In here, we need a way to get this ID so that we can say, okay, when the ID is new, I want to create a new movie, but when the ID is something else, I want to actually get that movie from the database and show it here in the form. We can do that with the help of Angular. So in our constructor, I'm going to inject a new property. This is going to be route and it's of type activated route. Let's see here. In our class variables, we are going to add a new variable called movie ID. This is going to be a string, and by default is going to be initialized as new. Then in our ng-on-init lifecycle hook, we are going to say that the movie ID is going to be whatever we get from this.route.snapshot.params movie ID, because this is the variable name we gave it in the routing module. So if the ID is new, there's nothing to do. The functionality is going to work as it's working right now. But if the ID is different than new, then this means that we actually have a movie that we need to get from the database. And for that, we are going to say that we are going to get the document from the database. Firestore has a method called doc where we can pass the collection we want to get our document from, in our case is movies, and then the ID of the document. In this case, it would be the movie ID. And in here, we can do something very similar to what we did with the collection. And when we add the value changes, it transforms it into an observable for us, strips out the metadata, and just leaves us with the data. Then I'm going to subscribe to this observable, and this is going to be the movie. So I say this.movie, that's our class variable, it's equal to whatever movie we are getting from the database. You see that we have an error here because we don't know what type movie is. We are not going to get into types right now, so I'm just going to save it. So when we save, we can see the page moving, and let's go in here and let's get one of the IDs from the database. When I replace the ID here, you can see that it's getting the movie from the database and it's populating it here. So here's the thing, if I click Save Movie, it's going to add a new movie to the database. It's not going to update the current Fantastic Four, it's just going to add a new document. So we are going to add a conditional in the Save Movie function. Let's see if the movie ID is equal to new, then we are good to go. We can do whatever it is that we were doing and nothing happens. If not, then we are going to do something a little bit different. We're going to say, okay, Firestore, we are not going to go to the collection, we are going to go to the specific document. And in here I can say, okay, movies / and I can pass the movie ID. And I can say, okay, I want to update this document and I want to pass whatever value is in this.movie. After that, it's going to be the same. So I'm just going to copy paste this right here and click save. Okay, so I reload the page, it gets the ID from the database, say Fantastic 4. Let's say this is Fantastic 10 because, I don't know, the family grew, so the rating also changed and it's now 5. When I click Save Movie, now I have Fantastic 10 here in the list. As you can see, we can click on the Add button and it takes us to this page, but we have no way to actually navigate into the detailed page of one of these movies. And we can fix that right now, so let's go to the home page, the HTML5, and in here, in the Ion item, we are going to add the router link property. And we are going to say, okay, this is going to take us to add movie, / and we are going to pass the ID of the movie we have right here. The ID was movie ID. When we save, you see that the page reloads and they all became clickable. So when I click on here, the Shawshank Redemption, for example, it's taking me already to the detailed page of this movie. So far, we've seen how to create objects in the database, update those objects, and to get those objects from the database to show them on our application. But what happens when we want to remove some of those objects? For that, we need to be able to delete data from the application. So we are going to go back to the Add Movie page, and in the HTML file, we are going to add a new button. Let's just copy this Save Movie button, and let's say, okay, I want this to be of a different color. Ionic has some color palette, and I believe if you type danger and click Save, it's going to give you a red button, perfect for our use case. Because in here we can say, okay, let's delete this movie. Type save again and you see that it changed the text and it says now delete movie. And the click handler, it's going to be a new function called delete movie. And as you can see, we have an error here because that function doesn't exist. So we are going to create it here. Delete movie. It's going to be a void function. And in here, we are going to do the same that we are doing in the other places. We're going to call Firestore. We are going to navigate to the specific document. In our case, this is movies / and we pass the ID. And we are going to call the function delete. Okay, here we are going to check if the ID is new, then we are creating or adding a new movie to the database, so we don't need the delete functionality. If the ID is different than new, it means that this is something that we got from the database and we want to be able to delete it. Let's do the same in the template. So let's go back to the add movie page.html file and we can add another condition here. So for example, we can say, let's see, next to delete movie, we can say, okay, but I only want to show this button if the movie ID is different from new. Let's see. Okay. So when I hit save, you see that now I have delete movie here. But if I go back to the list and I click add, I only have the save movie button because there's nothing to delete right now. And let's see, this is a mistake I made. Okay, Fantastic 5 doesn't exist. So let's delete the movie. You see that I have an error here because it's trying to keep reading that movie, but that movie no longer exists. Why is that? Because I forgot to navigate back to the home page. So let's add the same here after we delete the movie. Okay, nothing here. And let's navigate to one of the tests we made. Let's click delete, and after we delete the movie, we are navigating back to the other page. Let's see Fantastic 10, delete movie, this test, delete movie, And you see that all of those items are being deleted from the database. So let's see this here. And you see, it was just removed. Okay, now you have a greater understanding on how to create, read, update, and delete items from your database.